Welcome to UNBOSSED, where we are flipping the script on leadership. I am Staci Wright, founder and CEO of Heart Profit. I'm here with Gloria St. Morton Lowry, who is the president of HPWP. She has been teaching heart-based leadership skills for 30 years. And she is our partner, Heart Profit's partner, for putting together our curriculum for our leaders. So welcome, Gloria.
Woohoo! Today's discussion.
Yes, yes, yes. Today we're going to dive into a really, really, really big topic when it comes to how do you have heart-based leadership and performance, right? We want to have the compassion and the performance. We don't want to skip one for the other. And how do we do that in a powerful way? And today's topic is, I would say, really high up on the list of priorities for a leader when you are looking for performance with high compassion leadership. And that is positive reinforcement. So to start off with, why do you say, Gloria, why is this so important when you have heart-based leadership in your leadership style?
Yeah, if you believe in people, if you've hired a good team and you care about people and you believe the people on your team want to succeed and want to do well and want to contribute, my gosh, positive reinforcement is a natural fit. It's a natural fit for a heart-based leader.
Mm-hmm.
And positive reinforcement is also a natural fit for coaching to higher levels of performance.
Mm-hmm.
Research shows, studies will show that people's performance improves more exponentially when you focus on the good and focus on the things that need correction, because all people need is a little bit of recognition for what they're doing. They feel better about it. They do more of it, and they just keep moving forward even faster.
Yeah, I find that so to be true. And I've experienced that with working with HPWP just as a collaborative partner, because you guys live by what you teach. You don't just teach it, you live by it. And so I've had several conversations with both you and Sue where you give me that positive reinforcement, and then I feel more confident. I feel more able to take risks. I feel more comfortable going out of my comfort zone, if you will, because and I don't know what the magic is behind that, but there's something to it because it just works.
Yeah, and it feels good as a leader to be able to give positive reinforcement in a meaningful way, to do it in a way that's more than just good job or well done or I appreciate your hard work. It's
Yeah.
that full stuff that makes the difference. And my goodness, it also makes our job easier as leaders. It makes it more enjoyable. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so win-win all the way around.
Right? It just breeds positivity in all ways. How Heart Profit defines positive reinforcement is calling out what's going right. We want to really focus on what we focus on tends to grow, it expands. And so we want to focus on and call out what's going right. We want to use words to call it out. And it's not just about being nice or being fluffy. That is not what we're talking about. This isn't woo. This isn't just making people feel good. This is really there's an actual proactive approach to performance coaching that includes this methodology. And you touched on there's a formula for it. We're going to get into that in just a minute. So one of the other things that I think it's important to mention is that we talk about psychological safety and we talk about mental well-being in the workplace. And I know that from my own personal experience and from people I've worked with and people I've led and, watching my sister go through what she went through with her boss, that mental well-being of your people, when you're focusing on what's going right and you're calling it out, it is a boost of serotonin. It's a boost of feel good chemicals. It is a boost for the mental well being and the mental health, but also the psychological safety piece, which is I feel comfortable to take risks. I feel comfortable to make mistakes because if you want a high performing team, you have to get comfortable with making mistakes and having mistakes made. So that's just a part of a high performing team. And when you have that psychological safety, when you build that positive reinforcement as a part of your leadership, then it automatically builds up psychological safety, which automatically lets people go out of their comfort zone, take more risks, be okay with making mistakes.
And that builds more trust. And that's a key component to
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety. It builds more connection
Mm-hmm.
and builds trust and psychological safety. Because it builds all of that and it builds connections, you're demonstrating value in people, you're demonstrating belief in people. it leaves us as the person giving the feedback or the leader even more comfortable when we have to have maybe a tougher conversation, when we have to have a conversation about giving them some tips or some considerations, or when things aren't going as well. Nobody likes to hear that kind of stuff per se, but when you've gotten really good feedback and you feel valued by your boss, it's a little easier. It's not a little easier,
It's
it's a lot
a
easier to.
lot easier. It is like night and day. If I'm coming, if I'm walking into my boss's office and I don't have that trust,
Right.
I'm going to be a little bit more defensive. I'm going to have some defenses up. I'm going to be protecting myself, bracing myself for what's coming. Versus if we've had a connection over time where I know she's seeing all the things I'm doing right and there's something that needs some correction, I'm not going to be as defensive. I'm going to be pretty open to hearing that because I know she sees me as a whole person. She sees all the things, not just this one thing I'm doing wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was a very, very good point. But there's something else about this. It actually rewires the brain. I think that's a little bit about what we're talking about is that when we go from fear or we go from trusting someone, there's a different routing happening in the brain, which is going to, am I going to be okay? So we're constantly looking at scanning the environment. Is everything okay? Are we in trouble? Is something bad going to happen? Versus when you build that foundation of trust with positive reinforcement being a piece of that, our brain is completely rewired. So instead of looking for what could be going wrong, we're actually excited and looking for how we can contribute more, how we can make it better, how we can do things different. So it actually helps to rewire the pathways of the brain for our people.
And it becomes easier and easier to do. And
Mm-hmm.
it feels right to do it. And you get to do it more because then you see more good stuff. And we're really then on a path to just, performance stepping up, the work environment feeling great. So again, it comes, results in the ultimate win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are a leader who hates conflict, who hates to have those hard conversations, then you really want to step up your positive reinforcement game because if you do the positive reinforcement and you do it well over time, you have to have fewer and fewer hard conversations and there's less and less conflict. Why is that?
Well, why is it less conflict? Because
Yeah.
you're getting to stuff faster. We don't give positive reinforcement, like meaningful feedback at work, near as often. It's more like, well done, great job on that project. And that's more general.
Hmm.
That's more vague. And while I'll take well done and good job and appreciate your work on that project, it doesn't have the same impact for connection or things continuing to move faster because it's not as specific. And when you can give positive reinforcement in a meaningful way, you're not just talking about what they did, you're talking about how it reflects them as a person, what it says about who they are, what it says about their character and their strengths. And that's where it becomes easy to do. And then you're more bonded and connected to the person. And that makes it less awkward or less scary to give those tips later on that you may need to give. We're building up some credibility. We're working to build the person up. It's also us being able to look at that person as a contributor. And if we can give positive reinforcement more frequently, we're seeing all the things that they do well. And then if we see a tip, then we're like, oh gosh, they would want to know. We're convinced that they would want to know.
Hmm.
We are freely giving that positive reinforcement. And if there's a tip, I know that they would want it.
Hmm. Okay.
That takes away some of the fear and the awkwardness of talking about tougher things.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That makes a lot of sense. And so now let's jump into how, because clearly there's a formula here. It's not just the woo woo, good job, way to go, weehaw, yeehaw. It is very specific, it is very proactive. And so, what is the formula that you teach, that we teach in the Heart Profit curriculum about how to give positive encouragement?
It starts with thinking about what is it that you recognize about the person. It's being specific about the behavior, the action that they took that you think was a really good one to take. It's not waiting until the end, until somebody's completed it. It's about giving feedback as you go. So it's about being specific about what you see. And good job or well done is not specific. It's taking and saying something like, when you set up this campaign for outreach, wow, what I really appreciated about what you did was that you were thoughtful about the demographic. You really researched the profile. You put a lot of time and effort into making sure that the messaging worked, and you got feedback from a number of people in that process. That's a lot more specific.
Mm-hmm.
Good job. If people are doing something well, it has an impact, right? And so, what is the impact of that? And it could be the impact on a customer, the business, the team, you personally. And then that last piece is, what does it say about who they are? Kind of that whole human side of it. How does it reflect their character? It shows that they're dedicated, that they care, that they're passionate about contributing to the goals of the department or supporting their team members. The impact that it has is that it sets a tone and a model for others.
Mm-hmm.
The impact be that it just leaves a really positive impression with our clients or customers. When it has that kind of detail to it, that's really where the magic comes into play. And we always give the Maya Angelou quote as a comparison, right? People won't always remember what you did. They won't always remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And when you make people feel good about their contribution, they stand taller, they stand prouder, they do more of it. And man, the sky's the limit for
Mm-hmm.
what can be accomplished because you own it. And you've got this strong sense of pride about it. And with that comes the accountability and the ownership and I'm going to keep doing this because
Mm-hmm.
this is really the right thing to do. And I'm not doing it just for the accolades, but I'm really on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
And more of this.
Then those traits that you're pointing out grow in the person because they're like, oh, that's being recognized, and then it grows inside of them that whether it's determination or intelligent or the grit and getting things done and all of those things.
And that reinforces the risk taking and the psychological
Yeah.
because we're talking about them as a human being and what makes them up, those qualities, those characteristics. That brings it all together because they're like, okay, she does believe in me and I am on the right path, and let me stretch even more.
Okay, so just to recap there's a 3-point system. One is be specific. 2 is describe the impact. And then the third one is, what does it say about their character?
As a person.
So those are the 3 things. Those are the 3 things that allow the positive reinforcement to be high performance coaching. Yes. And trust building and all of the things that we want. Impactful.
Really impactful. And it's easy to do and it is fun to do. I mean, my goodness, to give positive reinforcement is huge. And I think people have this misunderstanding that you've got to really know the person to do it. And I want to call, BS on that. You can spend time, any even small amount of time that you spend with folks. When we do our workshops in person, in 3 days or in 2 days, we can give positive reinforcement to anybody in the room. Now, maybe more with some people. We might have to think a little bit more on some others. But in short order of spending time with people and seeing them in action, ask yourself, challenge yourself to think, what is it I'm seeing about them that I really appreciate?
Yeah.
It could be this. Before you know it, there's a ton that you can say. And that's part of the rewire your brain puts us in a position of proactively looking for what are people doing well. I think that's a lot of what's missing in leadership today because we've hired somebody, we may have trained them, you're off doing your job, and next thing when I talk to you, it's to tell you if you've done something wrong, rather than to say, gosh, you're really on the right path with this, follow that model, right? And then they just do more and better.
That's such a good point. And now I want to move in to talk a little bit about culture and how this as a culture impacts the whole culture, the whole theme of the business. How does this spill over and what effects does this have on the bigger picture of the business?
Yeah. I mean, it starts with you give it to an individual. Think about it when you've got a team that recognizes and values and appreciates each other and provides feedback to each other. that makes that team stronger. And then when it spills over into the other departments, silos begin to break down. Because if we are looking for, if we have part of our habit, our leadership habit, is to think about what is it that you admire or appreciate about people, then we can start to break down walls. We can start to break down barriers. We can resolve conflict easier because we are thinking about people versus my function and your function. And when more of us are operating that way, we have higher levels of performance, we have higher levels of collaboration and teamwork. And when you have all that, things move faster. And you can pivot, you can adapt, you can get to your end goal a lot faster. And the environment feels so much better than things feel like a battle. You're doing my job, you're here doing your job, somebody else is over here doing their job, and we don't lift our head up very often to connect or engage.
So you say it's so what I hear you saying is it's like a domino effect. So you give it to your people, then it automatically they spill over in their attitudes and the way they approach other coworkers that may be in a different department. And then there's more of a collaborative energy. That energy spills over and then it creates more collaboration, more teamwork, more togetherness.
It
Wow.
does because people get reinforced. So when you get reinforced, I see you as a role model. That provides some inspiration to me and vice versa. And so that kind of stuff can just create a wildfire in the best possible way.
I've facilitated masterminds for entrepreneurs in the past, and one of the biggest struggles for an entrepreneur going from a solopreneur to hiring people to scaling, as they're scaling that business, when it's just them, it's great because they're the energy of the business. They're creating that. Their passion goes straight to the customer or the client. It's like everything goes exactly how they would like it to go when it comes to culture. Not
They're in
everything.
control.
They're in control. Well, then they start hiring people, and then there's a layer that gets between them and the client and the customer. And so the customer gets a watered down experience of the original passion and vision of the company. And then you get more layers, right? So as you scale, you get further and further as a leader, further and further away from your people as an owner. So I could see this dominoing to the customer as well. So if we're doing this with our people, do you think how does that impact their interactions with the customer or the client?
They own it more, they feel it more. I mean, it
Or
goes back,
confidence.
yeah, and they see it as it reinforces it as an expectation. And they're an extension. If they value and respect the leader and they appreciate the culture or what's intended to be the culture, then they want to be able to contribute to it. Right. And so it's a matter of how do I contribute to that? How do I make the customer feel valued and important? How do we, keep customer satisfaction? How do we keep that satisfaction level high? And I always keep coming back to, and maybe more companies do this, Southwest. Their motto back in the day was take care of the people and the people will take care of the customers. And it still holds true today. And I think when entrepreneurs are growing and scaling their business, because it was them in the beginning, they just hang on for more control rather than to set that vision and say, this is what we're all about. And, this is what I want our culture to be. This is what I want our service levels to be. Let's talk about how you show up to that. Let's talk about how you make that happen. You get a dialogue and a discussion. You get leaders talking with their teams about and being able to provide positive reinforcement about how they're reinforcing the culture. When you want a culture ingrained, positive reinforcement can be a way. Communicate the expectation, set the vision for what you want the culture to be, involve people in how do we get there, and then give them positive reinforcement about how they're living values, how they're living.
Yes.
And then you've got it's just embedded.
That
Embedded, and feedback is considered a strong value along the way.
Okay, so let's go there. Let's talk about the example you gave me before we started, because what a lot of the business owners struggle with is embedding the culture into the people so that they can give the experience to the customer. And so what we did in the mastermind is like, okay, we want them to think it, we want them to see it, we want them to feel it, we want, so you want to give them the experience of it, you want to show it, have it written on the walls, and repeat it at the meetings and all of these things. But when we talk about impact of embedding, let's talk about how long does positive reinforcement stick with a person?
I'm sure there's probably some actual science on that along the way, but I will tell you from personal experience, positive reinforcement stays with you. When you use this model, it does make people feel good, and I think we're not used to that. And so sometimes we do the shucks, kind of approach with it. But when you go home, you think about it, you reflect on it. I kept for years, even in the last place I worked, we did the exercise as a team, and we created, may sound corny, but like a little yearbook. It was our experience for this offsite that we had. And then we wrote positive reinforcement in each other's little, handout, if you will. I kept that thing 15 years, probably. I was finally ready to let it go. When my son passed and we had his memorial service, Sue, who's been a dear friend and a mentor too, she gave me in front of people there positive reinforcement. That's not a work positive reinforcement thing. That's a mom positive reinforcement thing. And I start to get teary-eyed right now. It's emotional. And that's been almost 15. It's been what, 13? No, that's been 14 years now. So that's been a long time. And I feel it like it was yesterday. Now, is this going to be the case for all the positive reinforcement you get? Probably not, but you don't just hear the words. You don't hear just hear the positive reinforcement. You feel it. And when you feel it, it lasts so much longer. You tie to that. When I did this, it had this kind of impact, or this is what they appreciated with me. I need to find that strength now in this situation, and I'm going to keep plugging away, and you do.
There's a lot of science behind that, where you have the heart energy or the feeling energy is that magnetism, or that power, electromagnetic power is, I don't remember, like 100,000 times stronger than our electromagnetic power of our thoughts. So when we're telling people great job, that's a thought, right? But when we tell somebody this is like specific and this is how it impacts the group and this speaks to your character, it goes into that feeling mode. And that's the exponential power that comes from joining those two together.
And I think sometimes people view that as the fluff portion. Honestly, that's the meat portion of it all, because that's where it solidifies. This is what we recognize about what you've done well in this or that or in the moment. If somebody did something well, it has an impact. That impact makes it even more important. And then when you talk about my character or who I am as a human being to contribute that's those last two are where it really builds. And that's specific. That's what connects people to feeling good about what they've done, to feeling proud about what they're doing, that they just like, okay, let's go do more of this. Let's go finish this.
The motivation and the inspiration and the internal, that brings out that internal commitment. We talk a lot about compliance or commitment, right, with your people, and that actually feeds into the commitment.
Absolutely. And when you can give that kind of meaningful feedback, it does reinforce to the person that you care, that you care about them, and you see them as a contributor.
I was really shocked. We, at the end of the curriculum, the 12-week intensive that we do with our Heart Profit cohorts, one of the ones that we did at the very end, you gave positive reinforcement to each individual person. And I remember I was watching people's faces when you were talking, and you could just see the way they were feeling and the energy. We were on Zoom, and the energy, you could feel the energy, and it would just kept growing and growing and growing with each person. And by the end of that, it was like we were in a big old love fest. Everybody was feeling really good. And then you were like, okay, let's go on to, now we can finish. And they're like, no, 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 no. You need positive reinforcement too. And so then they all took turns giving you positive reinforcement. What was
Yeah.
that experience like for you?
I do the aw shucks with it.
Hmm.
So it feels good, but a little uncomfortable in the moment. And boy, it's so meaningful. What I took away from that was just that I made that what we're doing is good. What we're doing is adding real value, and what we're doing makes a difference. And I love the fact that when we did that, yeah, we've done a 12-week intensive. Well, it's been 2 hours a week.
Hmm.
And the reality is, everybody could give feedback to each other. We had we had a group when I'd give feedback, everybody else would then,
Like we
uh,
want to say something too about that
yeah,
person.
to give feedback. And to me, it's just the reminder that you can give it so easily, so freely.
And
Situations where you don't know the people all that well or haven't spent a ton of time around them. You don't have to have worked together for a year or 2 years to be able to recognize. You don't have to work for that 6 months. Maybe it can
mhm.
be days. Why would we let time go by without saying, here's what I'm seeing, here's the impact that it's having, here's what it says about you as a person. I really appreciate that. Man, they're just going to keep doing more of that.
So it really should be a goal for any leader to be giving positive reinforcement at least on a regular basis.
On a
Once
regular
a
basis.
week, at least, like minimal.
Yeah, if you've got a team, you have one-on-ones with them. If it's weekly, look for an opportunity to give it weekly. If it's monthly, at a minimum, give it monthly. But if you just ask yourself, what is it that I'm seeing that I appreciate? Then you can start to build it from there. What is the specific? What's the impact? What does it say about them as a person? It takes a minute to write it down, and it takes a couple of minutes to give it because we're sincere.
What would you say to the leader that says, I don't have time for that? That takes time.
I'm going to call BS on that. It takes a couple of minutes to give it. If the people on your team aren't worth a couple of minutes a day, then it may sound harsh, but you may need to rethink whether or not being a leader is for you.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, when you're connecting with folks, that's what leadership is all about. And when you invest those few minutes, multiplied by a number, you invest 10 minutes a day to get positive reinforcement to a couple of people, you
Hmm.
start to make your job easier. It is a very, very short term time commitment in the beginning,
Yeah.
huge gains once
Yeah.
you started, huge gains.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so you don't have, and to recap and wrap up, you do not have to wait until things go wrong to say something to your people. It's better to do it proactively. So, challenge for our listeners this week, catch three people doing something right. Tell them specifically that you noticed the impact it's having and the reflection of their character. Three this week. And then
That's
we want
easy.
to hear back from you. Yes, easy peasy. All right. Thank you, Gloria. That was an amazing conversation. I appreciate the depth that we dove into. And if you guys want more information about Heart Profit, you can check us out at heartprofit.org. We always have cohorts getting started. We're building our waiting list for our next cohort starting in the fall. So come join us, find out more information. We'd love to have you on the journey. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.